Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a truth that might surprise you. My first million wasn't luck, it was math. It wasn't a sudden breakthrough, and it definitely wasn't a moment of magic. It was math, cold, clear, undeniable math. And I say that because most people are waiting for something dramatic to change their lives, while I was quietly changing mine through numbers that added up every single day. I didn't wake up one morning and become a millionaire. I calculated my way there. I tracked what came in, what went out, and what stayed. I paid attention to patterns. I learned what worked and repeated it. I learned what failed and removed it. There was no mystery. There was no secret door. There was only discipline and numbers aligning over time. And once I understood that money follows structure, not emotion, everything changed. I stopped chasing opportunities blindly. I started building predictable outcomes. I realized that if I could control the inputs, I could eventually control the results. That realization gave me power, not the kind of power that makes noise, but the kind that builds quietly, steadily, and relentlessly. The kind that doesn't depend on luck showing up, because math doesn't lie, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't make excuses. And if you respect it, it will reward you. That's how it started, not with a dream, but with a decision to trust numbers more than feelings. And that decision changed everything. I stopped looking at 1 million as this massive, intimidating number sitting somewhere far in the distance. Instead, I broke it down, I dissected it, I made it smaller, simpler, and more real. 1 million a year became 83,000 a month. That became roughly 2,700 a day, and suddenly the impossible didn't feel impossible anymore. It felt like a target, a daily target, something I could wake up and work toward with clarity instead of confusion. Because when a goal is too big, it paralyzes you. But when it's broken down, it activates you. I didn't need to make 1 million overnight. I just needed to win the day, and then win the next day, and then repeat. That shift in thinking removed fear. It replaced it with focus. I knew exactly what I was aiming for every single day. There was no guessing, no hoping, no vague ambition. Just numbers that needed to be met. And when you start hitting small numbers consistently, they begin to stack. Quietly at first, then faster than you expect. That's when momentum kicks in. That's when confidence grows. And that's when you realize that big success is nothing more than small success repeated over time, with discipline and intention guiding every step. I didn't chase money. I built equations. I treated income like a formula that could be solved, adjusted, and improved. I asked myself simple but powerful questions. How much am I selling? At what price? What is my actual profit after costs? And how many times do I need to repeat this process to hit my daily number? These questions turned confusion into clarity. Instead of working randomly, I worked strategically. If something didn't produce results, I didn't get emotional about it. I changed the variables. I tested new approaches. I refined the equation until it started working in my favor. And once it worked, I didn't stop. I scaled it. I repeated it. I optimized it, because success is not about doing many things at once. It's about doing the right thing again and again until it compounds. I learned that every product, every service, every opportunity can be broken down into numbers. And once you understand those numbers, you gain control, you stop guessing, you stop hoping, you start operating with precision. That's when things change. That's when effort becomes efficient. That's when results become predictable. And that's when you realize that money isn't something you chase, it's something you engineer. I stopped relying on motivation because motivation is unreliable. Some days it shows up and some days it disappears. But systems don't care how you feel. They keep running. They keep producing, and that's what I built. I built routines that didn't require me to feel inspired. I built processes that guided my actions even on days when I didn't feel like doing anything. Because success doesn't come from intense bursts of effort. It comes from steady, repeated action over time. I created structure in my day. I knew what needed to be done, when it needed to be done, and how it needed to be done. And then I followed that structure consistently. Over time, those systems removed decision fatigue. They reduced mistakes, they increased efficiency, and most importantly, they kept me moving forward. Even when progress felt slow, even when results weren't immediate, because I understood something important. If the system is right, the results will come, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually they will. And that belief allowed me to keep going when others stopped. It allowed me to trust the process when nothing seemed to be happening. And in the long run, that made all the difference. Consistency became my greatest advantage, not talent. Not intelligence, just consistency, showing up every day, doing the work, even when it felt repetitive, even when it felt boring. Because the truth is, success is not exciting in the beginning, it's quiet, it's routine, it's built in moments that don't feel significant at all. But those moments add up, they multiply, and over time, they create something powerful. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be consistent. I needed to keep moving even if the steps were small. Because small steps taken daily will always outperform occasional bursts of effort. And as I stayed consistent, something changed. My results started to stabilize. My confidence started to grow. My progress started to accelerate. That's when I realized that consistency is not just a habit, it's a multiplier. It takes whatever you're doing and amplifies it over time, and when combined with the right system and the right equation, it becomes unstoppable. That's how progress turned into growth, and that's how growth eventually turned into wealth. At first, nothing felt dramatic. There were no big wins, no sudden breakthroughs, just small results slowly adding up. And that's where most people quit. Because they expect success to feel exciting from the start, but compounding doesn't work that way. It's slow in the beginning, almost invisible. You put in effort and the results seem small. You reinvest and it doesn't feel like much is changing. But if you stay patient, if you stay consistent, something incredible happens. The growth starts to accelerate. What once took weeks begins to happen in days. What once felt impossible starts to feel inevitable. That's the power of compounding. It rewards patience, it rewards discipline, and it punishes inconsistency. I trusted that process. I kept going, even when the results didn't match my expectations, because I knew that the real reward wasn't immediate. It was building beneath the surface, and when it finally surfaced, it changed everything. That's when the numbers started growing faster. That's when the effort started paying off in ways I couldn't have imagined. And that's when I understood that time, combined with the right actions, is the most powerful force you can ever use. I made a decision early on that I would not spend my early profits. I would multiply them. Every dollar I earned had a job. It wasn't there to impress anyone. It wasn't there to fund a lifestyle I hadn't earned yet. It was there to grow. I reinvested into better tools, better systems, better knowledge. I improved what was already working instead of chasing something new every time. That focus made a difference, because instead of starting over again and again, I built on what I had. I strengthened it, I expanded it, and over time those improvements created leverage. Things became faster. More efficient, more profitable, and that's when growth started to feel different. It was no longer just about effort. It was about smart allocation, about putting resources where they could generate more resources. That's how you move from working for money to having money work for you. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens through intentional decisions, repeated over time, and once you understand that, everything changes. You stop thinking about spending, and you start thinking about scaling. There were moments when things didn't work, when the numbers didn't make sense, when the effort I put in didn't match the results I got, and in those moments it would have been easy to quit. to assume that it just wasn't working, but instead I looked at it differently. I treated failure as information, not as defeat. Something wasn't right, and it was my job to figure out what, so I went back to the numbers. I analyzed, I adjusted, I changed the variables, because every failure carries a lesson if you're willing to look for it. And every adjustment brings you closer to the right formula. That mindset kept me moving forward. It kept me learning. It kept me improving, and over time, those small corrections made a big difference, because success is not about getting everything right the first time. It's about getting better each time, and when you commit to that process, failure stops being something you fear. It becomes something you use, something that guides you, something that strengthens your path instead of blocking it. At some point, something shifted. The growth that once felt slow started to accelerate. The results that once took months started appearing faster. That's when I realized I had moved from linear growth to exponential growth. And that shift changes everything. Because linear growth is predictable but slow, exponential growth is powerful, but it requires patience to reach. Most people quit before they get there. They don't stay long enough to experience the curve, but I did. I stayed consistent, I kept refining, I kept reinvesting, and eventually the results started multiplying. Not because I worked harder, but because everything I had built started working together. Systems, consistency, reinvestment, all aligned. That's when the numbers really started to grow, and that's when I saw the true power of what I had been building. It wasn't just income, it was momentum, and momentum, once it builds, becomes incredibly difficult to stop. By 2026, I didn't just reach 1 million, I understood it. I knew exactly how it happened. I knew which decisions led to it, which systems supported it, and which habits sustained it. And that understanding is more valuable than the money itself, because money can come and go, but knowledge stays. I could lose everything and build it again because I know the formula, I know the process, I know the math. And that's the real goal, not just earning but understanding, not just achieving but mastering. Because once you reach that point, you're no longer dependent on chance. You're operating with clarity, with confidence, with control, and that's what makes the difference between temporary success and lasting wealth. So if there's one thing I want you to take with you, it's this. Stop wishing for success. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect idea. Start calculating. Start breaking your goals into numbers. Start building systems that support those numbers. Start showing up consistently even when it feels small, because that's where it begins, not in big moments but in small, repeated actions. Turn your dreams into equations, turn your equations into daily actions, and then give it time, because once your math is right, time will do the rest. And when it does, you won't just reach your goal, you'll understand exactly how you got there. Ladies and gentlemen, in brief about today's speech, the math behind my first million, exactly how I did it, asterisk asterisk, let me start with a truth that might surprise you. My first million wasn't built on luck, talent, or even a big break. It was built on math, simple math, relentless math, honest math. Not the kind you memorize for exams, but the kind you live by every single day. Because wealth at its core is not a mystery. It is a system of inputs, outputs, and consistency over time. When I began my journey, I didn't ask asterisk, how do I get rich? Asterisk, I asked a better question. Asterisk asterisk, what numbers do I need to hit and how often? Asterisk asterisk, that question changed everything. I broke my goal 1 million into smaller manageable equations. Asterisk 1 million a year, too big. Asterisk about 83 zeros, 0 a month. Asterisk roughly 700 a day. Suddenly the impossible became measurable, and once something is measurable, it becomes achievable. But here's where most people stop. They look at the numbers and feel overwhelmed. I looked at the numbers and built a system. I didn't chase money. I designed flows. I asked, asterisk, how many products do I need to sell? Asterisk, at what price? Asterisk, with what margin? Asterisk, through which channel? And then I refined the equation until it worked. For example, if I sell something for $100 and I keep $30 profit, then I need about 90 sales a day to hit my target. That's not magic, that's math, but math alone is not enough. Consistency is the multiplier. Because the real formula isn't. Asterisk asterisk effort times time equals success asterisk asterisk hits. Asterisk asterisk small wins times consistency, time equals wealth asterisk asterisk every day I showed up. Even when results were invisible, because I understood something powerful, asterisk asterisk compounding doesn't feel dramatic until it suddenly is. Asterisk asterisk, let's talk about growth. At first, I wasn't making thousands, I was making tens, then hundreds, then something shifted. Because when you reinvest not just money, but knowledge, your growth stops being linear. It becomes exponential. I didn't spend early profits, I multiplied them. Asterisk, I improved my systems, asterisk, I automated what worked, asterisk, I eliminated what didn't, and slowly, the equation started solving itself. There were moments of doubt, moments where the numbers didn't add up, where effort didn't match results. But instead of quitting, I recalculated. Because failure is not the opposite of success, it is incorrect data. And data can be adjusted. By 2026, I didn't just reach $1 million, I understood it, I knew exactly where it came from, how it grew, and how to do it again. That's the power of math. It removes emotion, it replaces guessing with clarity. So if you take one thing from my story, let it be this: stop wishing for success. Start calculating it, break your dreams into numbers, turn your numbers into systems, and trust the process long enough for the math to work. Because once your equation is right, time will do the rest. Thank you.